Now, Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon.
I appreciate your support, dude.
Yeah.
It was,
Yeah.
that was a bunch of fucking bullshit, and glad it's passed, you know?
Yeah, and you're doing the right thing by addressing it, because the more you run from it, the more people dog you, and the more you just say, listen, like you did with Eddie Trunk, you just went, this is what it was.
Yeah.
And now we can talk about the music.
Well, that's why Eddie said, he goes, come on my show. I'll give you an hour. I'll give you my show to just sort of talk about it. You talk about it once, and then you don't want to talk about it again. There it is. Refer to the Eddie Trunk interview. That's it.
Right.
You know?
100%, absolutely 100%. And it's Howard Stern that always says that. He goes, if these celebrities just faced the questions and answered them, it would go away rather than have people ask more questions. And
that's why I addressed it the night it came out, even though, one side said not to. My legal said, I think you should. I think you should just run toward the bullets, take the sword, deal with it, just address it, which I did. And it was done, and it was over. And then the next day, when the other side started putting their announcements out, that's when it fanned the flame. The very thing they didn't want to happen is exactly what happened.
Yeah. Well, you know who I blame for all of this was,
and then I pay the penalty. Now I'm not in the band, so
Well, look, I blame Dave Mustaine for giving it legs, because had they not
100%.
even addressed it, you did your thing. It was like the next day I was like, fuck, whatever, beat off on some fucking shit, whatever. It is what it is.
Right.
But then the band goes on and puts out this all shit. I'm like, why? I felt like they threw you under the bus.
No, 100%. It was all based on fear. It wasn't based on reality. They said all sides would be heard, and quite honestly, no sides were heard, because within 2 weeks, I went through the process that I told them I was going to go through to just walk through it and say, hey, this is a bunch of bullshit. And I did my part. And, again, I confessed my, I was caught on candid camera. There was no hiding from it. So you just address it. You take the sword. You deal with it.
Yeah.
Well, look, I mean,
sorry about that. Move on. And
look, it's 2021, and all this shit is quite the norm. But I mean, at the same time, I was saying to Mitch, imagine this is 1986, and how many times would Dave Mustaine been kicked out of the band had there been screenshots and screen record back in the day?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, if anyone for that matter. I mean,
listen, the entire 80s scene would be under investigation if they had the cameras.
Talk about
back
canceled.
In the 80s.
I don't think the scene would have even went past another
just
year.
imagine.
Everybody's so afraid of that, and it's like, look, man, it's you don't run from it. I push back against it. It's like, this is bullshit, and it's that's what I said. Look, they threw the Molotov cocktail proverbial at my house and burned my house down. Would you please help me? Would you please support me? I could use some help right now. And quite honestly, I was just kicked to the side of the road to just deal with it on my own. And, so it's like, all right, well, then now we know where the loyalties lie, and now we move on.
I'm curious about that. I mean, why did they do that to you? I mean, you're basically an original member.
Look, I don't know for sure, because I've had no further conversations with anyone since then. But I mean, I can only go back to maybe, the lawsuit I filed 20 years ago, me not, being agreeable to just remix the catalog and, those couple of things, those things I'm sure this was a long-standing resentment toward me, and this was the opportunity to settle the score, and it is what it is. And, the truth of it is, when you're in a band, when you're in any relationship, brotherhood, marriages, whatever, you have to agree to disagree, because you're not always going to agree on everything. And, I think when things were reset 20 years ago, this was no longer going to be a band. It was no longer a partnership. It was his way or no way. That was very clear. That's why I wasn't in the band 20 years ago. When this happened, this is the way we're doing it. There is no negotiation. It's my way or the highway. And
so were you like Mustaine's employee in a way, and he just basically said, "Sorry, you're fired."
The last 10 years, I was an employee, and
wow.
It's funny to say that I was fired. I mean, I hadn't picked up a paycheck from Megadeth since September 2020 when we did the photo shoot for the album. So to say I was fired, I think is a bit,
dramatic.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's not like I was on the payroll getting a paycheck every week. Not rehired for the tour. Yeah, sure, I'll go with that. We're not rehiring you for the tour. Okay, fair enough. But
That's disappointing.
you know, yeah,
Right.
I
So
mean,
you weren't-
I wasn't getting a weekly paycheck, you know, from the group. I mean, when we worked, I got paid. When we didn't, I didn't. And then hence why I did a coffee company and a record company and all the other things to, you know, fill in the blanks and support myself and build up, you know, my own, you know, legacy for my family and to have things like that. And so I certainly, those things I think were, supported by management. I think they saw that, you know, if I wasn't going to be, you know, you can't expect
they read between the lines.
You
got to pay your
can't expect
bills.
for someone to be beholden to a company when you're not getting paid by that company in the off time, you know? So, but I think, you know, I don't think Dave liked it, you know, but it's like, hey, you know, royalties by loyalties, man. You know, when you're all in and you're all in and you're getting paid for everything, then hey, you know, look, for the first 20 years of the band, I never did anything. I wrote a book, you know, and I co-wrote one song in a Flotsam and Jetsam record. I didn't do anything because when you're all in, you're all in. But you know, when the group disbanded, and it disbanded in 2002, it was not a hiatus. It was not taking time off. It was very clearly a disbanding. And when that happened, look, we were all left to our own, you know, and that's when you know, and it's that way to this day. So, you know, it's kind of everybody fends for themselves. So, you know, when I came back 10 years ago, look, I was glad to be there, agreeable to be there, happy to be there for the fans, to play the songs, to be part of the legacy, and clearly I put another 10 years of gas in the tank, you know, so it was a good thing. And that was always my attitude, you know, do it for the love of the music, the love of just being there for all of it. And I was looking forward to that continuing, obviously. But, you know, I guess that's not where that's not what they want now. So
I'm going to say a couple of things on this. First of all, we are here to talk about the Lucid, so we're going to get to that in just one second. But that to me was the greatest reveal in the business, that a lot of the band members that I know that are friends, you know, that are the replacement players and stuff, they go, well, after the tour ends, we're furloughed. And I was like, what do you mean you're furloughed? You're not on contract? You're not on? No. They go, no, we're laid off until the next tour. And I'm like, really?
You know, in Nashville, it's common when tours end, people file unemployment. It's just common, you know, and over in rock and roll, that's not the common thing. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I mean, look, on some level, you're kind of like the handyman. You know what I mean? You're called in to fix the pipe and clean the sink.
But
and then when the job's done, you're out, you know.
It so shocked me. I thought you were all on retainer. And I'm talking these major acts, like arena acts that have replacement guys or, you know, fill-in guys. And they're like, no, we're furloughed. And it's just like,
the last 10 years, I mean, when I worked, I got paid. When I didn't, I didn't. You know, I mean, that's why, again, you see why I was so busy doing other things. And again, doing it for the love of doing it. Speaking of love, hello, Drew. How are you?
Hello, Drew. And Ace Frehley on your shirt, by the way. Hello, Drew. So now that Drew's here.
At a convention. Hello. I was like, dude, that's so metal.
I got Billy Idol today.
Do you? There you go. Drew, what's on your shirt? You got
All Saints.
He's got a pick.
He's got a Lucid pick. So now that Drew is here, he's in the band with you. And we're just going to focus on, we're going to focus only on Bang Tango for the next half.
Please, let's do it.
I got stories. I do got stories. I was just talking to Mark Knight the other day, actually. I still talk to all those guys.
And we'll talk about Beautiful Creatures and how everybody in that band was 25 when it launched.
Yeah, exactly. So Joe was 14 when he was in Bang Tango.
Now, 48 would technically is French, I guess, right? Because most people can't spell it right. He's been called Frontier,
Fortier,
Fontaine. Yeah, exactly.
Fortier.
So, finally, the French Canadian get it right. So
Drew Farter.
Fartier.
So, all right. So the Lucid now, Ellefson, Mr. Ellefson. Is Drew an employee or is this a band?
I'm on salary.
Well, the beauty of the Lucid is there is no money, so we split nothing equally, right?
Don't get caught on webcam, or else Human Resources is calling you, man.
I mean, it's like every band. You start with all you have is a dream and brotherhood, and hopefully something ever comes of it, you know. And so no, we went all in on this. We said, look, it's four guys, four ways. And so, you know, if a dollar ever does show up, we'll each get enough to make a phone call, you know, but
just so everybody knows, I'm not wearing pants right now.
Oh, neither am I.
I was going to say, please put your pants on when you're on the internet. It's a lesson here.
Lesson learned.
There is a lesson here.
I thought it was like the thing. You can't wear pants when you're on cam with Dave Ellefson. I thought that was the new.
You can see me from here up. Trust me, I have my pants on. I assure you.
That's the way it should be.
Internet law.
So is the Lucid just this one-off project, or do you want to develop it into a band? Or do you, Dave, at some point say, listen, whatever, Kiss or whoever, please call me, I'm available? Like, what's sort of the future?
Both. I mean, look, I am available. And I think that's why I was, I guess a couple of things. First of all, we did the record. We had always scheduled it to come out in October. The Dwellers movie came out October 12th. The Lucid record was October 15th. And September 1st, Drew, he called me and said, hey, I'm going to change the header on your Facebook. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know if you should. And then he did. And suddenly it was international news, like something's coming. And people were very excited. And so to everyone, people everywhere, thank you. Namaste. Yeah. You don't even know how much I appreciate that, because when the summer that I just went through, you really don't know where to turn and who to turn to. And I mean,
listen,
it really
I don't think you
did
did anything wrong, so I don't know why anybody wouldn't be supporting you. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
That's just a Tuesday for
everybody
me.
was supporting me, and it was very comforting. And again, I just thank you, everyone in the world, everywhere. I really appreciate it. Yeah. But when Drew did that, it was kind of the first sort of, okay, professionally now you're coming back online, and people really enjoyed so far what they're hearing from the Lucid, which is great. And I think on all these things, you put out a record, whether you're in a big band or just a little startup thing like we're doing with Lucid, and you kind of throw a line in the water and you see if you get a bite, and so people seem to really be liking it. It's inspired us to, our agents literally just before we got on the call sending us emails with offers for stuff in the new year, and like all these things is, who's available? Are we available? Can we do it? And so far, we seem like we found a couple little windows we can go out and try to bang some shows out, which will be fun. And we've already got a new Dropbox folder of new ideas, some riffs, licks, songs, actually, some lyrics. And, I think when you get some traction, you go, yeah, sign me up for another one. Yeah. Let's do it. And if it's dead in the water, well, then you move on. But I think this one seems to be getting some traction.
And that's the cool thing about 2021. I mean, you got so many different options. You go on the road, you do the live, you could do the merch packs, you do this, you do that, you do the OnlyFans. I mean, there's so many different things that you could do. And it's like with this project, I mean, where do you start though? I mean, like, does it start with the music? Does it like, okay, hey, we got a couple of good a couple of good musicians together. Like, how does the song start for you? Like, where does it start?
Drew's laughing about OnlyFans because that was one of the first things he said. He goes, dude, I think it's time to get your OnlyFans going now.
That was the Blabbermouth headline now.
I wanted to slide that in to see if it would go over your head, but Drew caught it.
Yeah, so no. That's why Drew's laughing.
You got to run with it. You can either let it crush you or you can just run with it. So just run with it.
All right, let's get the OnlyFans going. You said it. You spoke in here first by Jeremy.
Yeah. Run with it, let it flatten. That's going to be the Blabbermouth headline tomorrow. David Ellefson. Exactly. All right, let's get the OnlyFans going.
The OnlyFans. Hey, it seems to work for all the others that do it. So I don't know. That's where they're making their real money when you're not on the payroll, I guess.
Yeah, but the music came out pretty quickly. So this project it didn't just happen like in August. I mean, you must have been working on it for a year.
Well,
and then
said, Drew, Drew sent me something. It was last year in 2020. You sent me the song which became Hair, and I played bass on that. So that was really kind of, I think, the first song we worked on. When was that?
April, I think.
April-ish.
April, and then June we started hitting it hard, and then July we ended up in LA, and
leftover Bang Tango demos,
and Vinny. That was Zen from Mars. Zen from Mars was all leftover Bang Tango demos, and obviously that never got done, and because that's first. And but this though, the song Hair was actually a leftover Zen from Mars demo.
Oh, there you go.
It is a Zen from Mars song. Yeah.
There you go.
It was. I tell you what, Drew would send stuff. He sent the one song, and I said that was really cool, man. And he said, well, you want to play in some more? And he sent more over, and then that's when Mike Heller said, look, let's come over to LA to my studio. And Mike is an incredible producer. I mean, not only is he a great drummer, but he's a fantastic producer. He's got good ideas, good ear. And I tell you what, I've grown more as a bass player in the studio working with producers, because they suggest things that you would not come up with, maybe take a turn here, play a little lick up here.
I mean,
so they all,
with somebody just like Dan Huff alone, I mean, there's so much you could learn from him.
Yeah, I mean, who needs bass lessons when you can work with Dan Huff and even Mike? I know Mike doesn't have that kind of a pedigree, but in his world, he's the guy. I mean, he works on all these death metal records and all these things like that, and he's great. And so again, to just step into a world that you don't normally work in, it always tightens up your playing. And Drew drove out. Vin flew out from Detroit. We sat there in the room, and to really be in the room.
I flew out. That would have been like a 3-day drive.
but to sit there with again, guitars in hand, going over parts. Should we bend this note here? Little phrasing, things like that. I mean, that makes all the difference in the world. Because I think last year in the pandemic, last 2 years probably, we've all worked on a lot of records where we had to do them like this, over Zoom, and we're just working in our home studios, and that's fine. But it's this one-way conversation, so it's nice to be in the room where everybody's part of the conversation, and I think the music reflects it, and I think we captured that on this album.
What's the process like compared to working with Dave Mustaine?
Well, look, every situation
has a say.
Yeah. Well, partly. I mean, look, every situation's different, and you walk into it. I think the main thing is, as a professional, you walk in and you go, and you need to quickly suss out who's in charge, who's writing the songs, what are we doing here, and I think you look at that for what it is. And I knew right from the beginning, look, Dave's going to write most of the songs, and he's going to come up with a lot of the ideas. He came up with some great ideas for bass parts. I mean, he is the, Tchaikovsky, if you will. He is the composer that composes the songs. And when he comes up with a part, you can make suggestions, but usually just do it his way. And that is what that setting is over there. This setting over here, very different. Drew and Mike were mostly framed the tunes out. They had the framework of them pretty much done. And, but because of the nature of the songs, gave me a lot of flexibility to add character and write parts within that. And of course, every part that's added, kind of like cooking, when you add a part, a little pepper means a little more salt, means a little more pepper, a little more salt. You know what I mean? So everything kind of changes the flavor. And so where things start to go, then Vin started writing lyrics and putting his melodies down. And of course, Mike's drumming, the initial demos, I think, were pretty simple parts. But, once I cut my bass parts to Mike's real drum tracks, it's like, whoa, okay, there's some cool, like, picking up. Yeah, I always call it, it's the Geddy and Neil Peart thing, right? Where you're, as a bass player, you can like pick up licks with the drums, like do. You can almost be musical with the tom-toms, and things like that. So, everybody adding their fill exactly. Everybody adding their part changes where it went from the original kind of simple demo of the idea.
Wow.
You of course have been doing this for 40 years professionally. Do you come into a situation like this and say, all right, guys, I'm the elder statesman here. This is how we should proceed. Do you sort of have that attitude where you sort of say, all right, listen, I love your idea, but trust me, I did this in 1985. This is going to work better.
You know what? I should do that. You want to be my agent? I should do that. Just walk in. I was going to say dick swinging, but that might be an inappropriate comment.
Listen,
why not? It's in your contract now.
Exactly. It's in my contract. Dick swinging. That's what you're doing. No, I try not to be honest with you. I try to just approach it. Look, because everybody's a professional. I mean, Drew's, maybe not as famous, but he's been through the grind. I mean, he told me about all the records that he played on, worked on, some that just never came out. They were at the starting line and then they tripped and they don't come out. That is the story of most professional musicians. There's a few of us who got across the starting line, actually got in the race. A few of us finished the race. It's a beautiful thing. Obviously Vin, total consummate pro. Mike, I learned as I'm in the studio with him, working with him, going, man, this guy has got some ears, man. This guy's got ideas. So for me, Megadeth, Soulfly, Ministry, the Lucid, whatever it is, walk in and just, be a player amongst players,
You gotta teach me how to do some dick swinging.
Yeah. Drew, not as famous, but leak some dick pics and we'll get you sorted.
I got pics.
He's halfway there.
Dude, that'd be a really good
all
merch.
I gotta do is stand up.
That's a good merch idea right there. Put your dick on some pics and you get some dick pics.
Like an actual dick, like my actual
actual shot of it.
You could put it in the frame back there that says the Big Four.
I don't think they make pics that small.
No, but Dave, I want to ask you this, just back to Sirius for a second. A lot of bands there's a lot of musicians that are failed musicians. They tried and they ended up playing the bowling alley, and that's it. How did you get to that next level? What was it? Are you just that good of a bass player? Was it luck? Was it a friend? Were the songs that Dave wrote that good? Like, how did you get to be here 40 years later? Because this industry eats its young.
It sure does. It eats its old too. It eats everybody. That's a great question, and it's all of it. I mean, look, first of all, if you're in the room, we already know you can play. I tell lots of weekend warrior guys. I tell that. I said, listen, you don't need to keep overselling your stuff. You're in the room. You're here on the stage. We know you can play. You don't need to impress us with your chops. We wouldn't have called you if we didn't think you could play. So let's just get that out of the way. Turn your volume down, shut up, don't play when I'm talking. You know what I mean? Like, be a respectful professional.
From there,
it's a matter of, and from there, it's a matter of like, okay, are we vibing? Are we grooving on this? And again, sometimes it's a matter of being able to take direction. Hey, listen, this is what I want. This is how I want it played. Play that, I always said with Megadeth, I can pretty much do Dave Mustaine on demand. Whatever he needed, I could play, you know what I mean? And that didn't just happen. That was, we were in the room when we started the band together. I was there when the initial riffs of, Looking Down the Cross, which is initially called Speak No Evil, like when that was starting, I was there watching it, picking up on it and learning the part and, and then you sort of, you develop these things. So certainly look, good songs, having aggressive management is important, being the right thing at the right time. By the time I got to LA in 1983, all of the, let's call them Sunset Strip bands I went to basically to the Troubadour when Wasp was getting signed to Capitol. It was their last show. I think that was the night I met James and Lars, actually. I think they were there at the show, ironically. And that was probably June or July of 83. And that was kind of the end of it. Armored Saint, Rat, Motley, that whole scene had moved through. Obviously Metallica was the big, hero of the next thing, and behind it Slayer, Anthrax, and Megadeth, and and everything else. What was your first
impression of James and Lars when you met him?
They were totally cool. Lars was chatty. He could tell he did the most of the talking. James didn't say a lot, but they were very cool, man. I didn't know what to make them because the only I'd heard of them was, conversations of Dave talking about them and being in the band with them. But I certainly loved No Light to Leather.
He was a little bitter at that point, I would think.
Again, he had his side of it, of course, so yeah. And it's just kind of it's one of these things, if you're my friend, you'll hate all my enemies and you'll love all my friends too. Which side do you pick with that, but those guys have been nothing but great, and I've become good friends with them and as with all of the big four. So I got over long ago, like, hey, this loyalty of if I'm going to be in Megadeth, I have to like hate Metallica somehow. It's like, what a bunch of bullshit. I fucking love it. I did No Light to Leather. Funny, Ron McGovney, that was my Metallica bass player. You know what I mean? So like, I've always said Mechanics, when we cut it for Killing Is My Business, I did the Ron McGovney bass line. That to me was kind of my first impression of them. But, look, so I landed there in 83. It was the right place at the right time. My gut kind of told me that when I was 16 years old, living back in Minnesota. So for me, I realized I'm put on the planet to be a bass player, be a professional, do this. Like this was a sort of God-given talent and path. And I just tried to listen to it. It's even today, 56 years of age, I wake up and what song can we play? When we're done here, I'm going to be working on a tune. Me and Drew are ripping ideas in and out of the Dropbox now. So this is what you do. This is why you're a part of why you're on the planet. Yeah. But a lot of it too is back to your question there, Mitch, is knowing when to speak, knowing when to shut up. And how important is it, and being part of a team, because the team wins the game, not the star quarterback. I mean, Brady's amazing, but he's got to have someone to throw the ball to, and there's got to be a defensive line to protect. So it's a team of people that make it happen. And I guess it's why I chose the bass, because that's kind of a team role inside the band. But everybody in the band has their role. Kind of stay in your lane, do your thing, pick your battles, and try to stay out of the drama. And just remember why you're there. It's that love of getting on stage playing. It's the love of writing songs. It's love of making a great song, writing a great song record. And try to just focus on that. One of the things I learned when I first moved to LA is playing music. Suddenly, when you're starting a band and everything else that goes with it, playing music is like the smallest part of being in a band, because it's promotion. It's me and Dave, we were fucking homeless in the beginning. We were so poor, you know what I mean? So you've got, how do we get a roof over our head? How do we eat? Blah, 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 all these other things. And then not to mention trying to, book the shows and get these things going. But I think we had good partnership. Dave, after Metallica, that was a pretty hard landing for him. And I think the fact that me and my Minnesota brood ended up on his doorstep helped him have a second chance. And certainly me being there, meeting Dave, gave me a chance. And that's why I think we both won. Had that not happened, who knows?
Can I just say one thing about that? I mean, you just said that he had a hard landing and he got a second chance. I mean, you forward 40 years later to what happened to you, and you would think he would be a little bit more understanding, had a little more empathy, and say, instead of letting my Dave land hard, I'll give, but no empathy, no sympathy, just out of the band, erase the bass tracks. And it's like, really? You didn't learn anything from the Metallica situation? Okay.
Well, maybe that's how he felt when he got, landed out of Metallica and Kirk Hammett played his guitar parts. You know what I mean? That must be kind of the thing. And, I tried to be very empathetic toward Dave with that. I was tried to be his biggest cheerleader and his, his wingman, through everything. And I just, look, first of all, we're in a band together, and I can't imagine his feelings about watching Metallica to go on the success that they had. But I always thought it was like, shit, dude, we're doing pretty good here ourselves. I think we're doing okay. And people love Dave for what he did, not only in Metallica, but for what he did, in Megadeth, and got to be in two of the greatest heavy metal bands ever, So, it's like Kerry King. We were talking about that when we did the Big Four. I said, hey, Kerry, you're both in Slayer and you were in Megadeth. How cool. Yeah. It's like, you and Dave are the only two guys who are actually in two of the bands of the Big Four when we were doing those gigs. And,
wow.
So, look, man,
and listen, Symphony and all the other songs, they're as classic as a lot of those Metallica songs. You can't be sad that you were in Megadeth. You can't
discount any of that.
No.
Yeah, I mean, look, I took some time this summer to really just try to be, have forgiveness and again, look, I realized a lot of this stuff, it created a lot of fear. There was a moment, there's a lot of fear. I realized that.
Yeah.
And that's,
you were lucid to the whole,
that moment. Yeah. That moment created that. And I realized that, that's, you could kind of go one of two directions with that. But, look, at the end of the day, look, it's landed where it's landed, and, now we move on and don't be bitter about it,
How do you build the Lucid into a touring entity or into a business? I mean, listen, you're probably not going to get to arenas and stadiums with the Lucid, but you can certainly be out there touring and making a living and doing very well. So how do you get it to that level where you're out doing the club circuit, you're out making it a viable business?
Well, I said I wasn't going to go out in a van, and Ben said, yeah, but we're going to have suits on. We're going to wear suits. And I went, okay, now that you mentioned suits, we can be in the van, But, I think it's a little bit of, look, I said that because we're not going to just go out and grind it out in starting at that sort of bottom level. Unfortunately, because we're kind of well-known guys, it doesn't start at the bottom. And look, neither did Megadeth, quite honestly. When I met Dave, I mean, shit, we went to San Francisco and sold out the Stone. We sold out 500 and 800 seat rooms, and I don't know, got paid $1,000 or $1,500. I mean, that was not starting at the bottom, and that was because of his history with Metallica. So I've kind of been in this situation once before, with that band. So now being here with what we're doing with the Lucid, there's already kind of a built-in interest, so we don't have to go out and flyer all of Detroit and Indianapolis to try to get people to come to the show. There's kind of a built-in
have to go play
interest.
the bowling alley.
No.
Yeah, and so look, I think it's a little bit of you play a few clubs, you sort of roll it out, you give it a look, and then I think
try to get an opening slot.
Well, like the cruises, these festival shows, now there's a lot of these festival shows again. Those are perfect for what we're doing with the Lucid.
Agreed.
Even if it's 2 p.m. on the side stage, you know what I mean. There's a lot of people there. Even if you're just walking by to get a beer, you go, oh, these guys are all right, So it's and I think we're all very realistic that that's what it is, and doing it just for the love of the music and the brotherhood and the fun we have doing it is the whole point of it.
Do you play? Supplement and I was going to say, and you supplement the income with the OnlyFans. So there you go.
Exactly. They got that in place. Once you get that going, then we can just play music.
Then you're gonna be in the money. Do you play any Megadeth songs during your set just to a nod to the fans? I mean, you are part of it. I mean, it's not like you should totally just close the door.
You can play any song you want live. I mean, you can do whatever you want live. That's why there's BMI and ASCAP, CSAC, and those societies that collect that money.
So throw in Metallica covers then.
Hey,
do Enter Sandman.
Metallica. I love Metallica.
No, but do you close the door on Megadeth completely, or do you tip a nod? I mean, do you do a bass solo?
No, I mean, in this band, I don't know. I guess we'd have to see. It seems appropriate that we might play a Sponge song, since we have the singer from Sponge, and he's so, and probably a Bang Tango song, since we've got the guys in the band. We probably won't play Fear Factory or Raven, even though Mike Heller's in both of those bands.
That'd be interesting.
That would be a little inappropriate, but
no, but an encore of Symphony wouldn't hurt. I mean, you do it your own. You do it the Lucid way.
Or do Symphony, but in the style of Fear Factory with Vin from Sponge singing it. There we go.
Yeah. No, but
with Ace Frehley on lead guitar.
That would work. No, but so you're gonna not do that. You're not gonna be a tribute act. You're gonna be the Lucid and do the Lucid stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. And again, look, it's to your question. No, look, I have not closed the door on my Megadeth past, like bitter, like screw those guys. That's it. I've never, no. It's again, we're family. Even though we're having a family feud, and we may not all be hanging out at the family reunion this year. Look, you do something like this for this long, we get over our stuff, and it's
there'll be a 40th anniversary of whatever album coming up, and
Well, that's what I was just going to say. I mean, does Dave realize, hey, what, I kind of fucked up, and I should have, maybe had Ellefson's back, or is he so stubborn that he's going to be like, fuck that guy?
Well, for now,
I don't know. I haven't talked to him since that phone call.
Listen, we've got what was it? Euthanasia was in '94, so you've got the 40th anniversary or whatever coming up, 30th anniversary coming up in a couple of years.
Well, that's the thing now is these records keep coming up on these anniversaries, and fans want to hear these deep cuts. They want to hear this stuff, So I think that's that is part of it,
My Megadeth started at Euthanasia because to me, listen, I did the whole hair metal thing, and then I moved on to Metallica with the Black Album, and then when I was done with Metallica, I was like, oh, hey, Euthanasia's out, and then I went, that's kind of, I don't want to say it was poppy, but it was more accessible.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, Kiko always said that when we were putting set lists together, because he goes, the first real kind of, the big look down in South America was Euthanasia. That's when we went to Chile and Argentina and played in Brazil again. We'd played Rock in Rio and Rust in Peace, but that was a one-off. So that was the first time. And so the music was the tempos were a little bit slower. The lyrical themes were, it's interesting when you talk to, again, I'll reference Kiko, but, because he's a foreigner and English isn't his native language, so it's like when you sing a song, if there's a sort of kind of big sing-along chant is easier for an audience to grab onto than if it's sort of a narrative, a storyline that they have to follow along to. So I was like, things that I would have never thought about. And the music is always, that music is translated very well everywhere around the world. But
that's
you know,
a really
when you're
good point,
thinking
though, because that's why you hear so many songs with oh, and all these things.
yeah,
you know?
yeah,
Get to the chorus, don't bore us.
yeah, exactly. So that was something to think about with that, you know, when I look, move it over to the Lucid. I think it's one of the things that worked well with this is Vin writes really great anthemic choruses, you know what I mean? Even if you can't understand what he's saying, which I do, but if you can't, you know, because you're maybe in a foreign language, you can at least follow the melody. And it's
like a
I remember
Megadeth.
playing Japan, you know, and like everybody in the audience would be singing the words, and then you talk to them after the show, and they couldn't speak a lick of English. And you're like, how did you understand that? And
Listen,
a lot of people I've met around the world like learned how to sing, how to speak English by listening to Megadeth and Guns N' Roses and Metallica, like listening to, you know, their favorite rock bands. That's how they learned how to speak English.
Yeah.
I'll tell you this. In Quebec, we had an Elvis impersonator called Elvis Graton who did the whole Elvis stuff. And when you got him off stage, he spoke in deep woods French. And you went, blah, blah, blah. He goes, no, I just mimic the sounds. I don't know the words. Yeah. But if you go listen to him, he did Elvis better than any Elvis impersonator, but he doesn't speak English. He was just mimicking the sounds, and you're just like, wow.
Well, why is it that people from the UK with heavy British accents, when they sing, they sound like could be American, or you know what I mean? It's just very kind of generic. And then when they speak, they're like, "Well, Cockney," you know. Cosmina from the Scorpions. I mean, you know, it's like, you know, you can kind of tell he was in the early days. He was working on it, you know what I mean? But it's like,
well, you listen
like,
to that line, down to Conky Park, like, that doesn't sound American.
I mean, we knew they were German, you know what I mean? So we got it. But it's funny how he could sing in English and it worked everywhere, you know, whereas if he just sang in German, it probably would have limited their success back in that day.
Yeah.
Well, listen, we got to wrap really quickly, but you know, so when's this record coming out? It's going to be
already
full
out.
length. It's already out. The entire thing's out completely. Okay.
Yeah. We put it out. So it came out October 15th digitally, and then Drew, you got the link right where people can buy the physical.
LucidOfficial.com. It's on LucidOfficial.com. It's on Spotify, Amazon, iTunes, the whole shebang.
Awesome. You got vinyl, or is it just digital?
Yeah, there'll be vinyl. Vinyl's probably start shipping around March because.
Cool.
You know, manufacturing and all that.
Plenty of time to put us in the liner notes then. That's great.
If you really want to make some money, somebody please start up a new vinyl factory, because vinyl, like, I don't care who you are, vinyl's like 6 months out. If you get your OnlyFans, put up your vinyl.
By the way, do you know who they're blaming for that right now? This is a true story. They are currently blaming Adele for this because there is so much demand for her album that all the vinyl stores or vinyl manufacturers said, yeah, we're going to fucking press those.
Well, it was Adele and Ed Sheeran. Ed Sheeran's new album just came out last
week.
Well,
you know what? When the Stokies came out in 2016, the record was number 2 in Canada only because Adele was in the way. So Adele's always in the way of progress.
She's always
Adele has a song.
Adele has a song called "Someone Like You," and there's that other band I was in that has a song called "Someone Like You." Connection, coincidence? I don't know.
Well,
I will say this about Adele: she definitely got a credit in my book, because when we were at the Grammys that year in 2017, they were doing a tribute to somebody who had passed.
Was it George Michael?
Was it George Michael? Yeah, and she couldn't find the key, and she stopped and she swore on live. She just fucking stopped, and I was like, right on, you know.
That was the George Michael tribute.
Live TV on the Grammys, so her cred went way up in my book. You know,
she made her start over. And speaking of Adele, she's back when Van Halen's "A Different Kind of Truth" came out in 2012. It was her album that kept them from being number 1. They were number 2.
She does that to every band, to every rock band.
But
she is currently being number 1.
She's currently sucking up the vinyl stock or whatever,
sucking up the wax.
Yep.
How dare she?
Yeah, that's why. Anyway, there you go. Thank you. Always a pleasure, and always glad to support. And
thank you, Mitch.
We're glad to see you moving forward.
See the Lucid on tour, and you can purchase your limited edition Dave Ellefson Intimate VIP package.
You guys have manager written all over you up there, right?
Yes, we do. We are going to be taking over.
I see money.
Give them a cut.
Where there's crisis, there's opportunity. So
correct.
Capitalize on it. We'll take
the day.
Well, I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
All right. See you later.
Bonsoir.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Cheers. Thank you, Drew.
Thank you.
All right. There you go.